I'm Matthew Sissom. I'm a member of Team 2/5 Nick, and I'm going to be walking you through a very abbreviated version of Pocket of a Madman, our first project for Game Design and Development 2. So the core of this game is very similar to chess. In the main battle phase, players will move pieces around the board, taking one turn at a time. So, and if I move a piece on top of another piece, then it will be removed. So you can see here the different movements of these pieces. So here's the dragon. You can see on the dragon's corresponding piece card that it can move 3 units forward. So if it was my turn, I could move the dragon here and land on top of the clairvoyant witch, which would be removed from the game. In order to win a battle, you need to be the last player with pieces left on the board, or remove all of your opponent's pieces. So in this case, I would win. Great. But the game's not over yet. In order to win your freedom from the Pocket Universe, you need to best your opponent in at least 2 battles. So you need 2 battles to win, so the game can go up to 3 battles total. But before any of the battling can start, you need to go through the other phases. I'm going to load up a demo real quick to show the draft phase. So to draft a card, you first need to decide who's player 1 and who's player 2. So player 1 generally has an advantage during the draft phase, and player 2 generally has advantage during the setup and battle phases, and we'll see that very shortly. So to draft a single piece, what you're going to do is start with 3-star pieces, who are the strongest units in the game, and then go down to 2-star pieces, which are pretty strong, and 1-star, which are the weakest units in the game. So to draft the piece, you're going to first pull out 3 cards, and then flip them over. So if the card has an odd number of stars, like a 3-star piece or a 1-star piece, then player 1 gets their pick first, because 1's an odd number. So looking at the cards here, I really like the Great Warlock. You can see he's a 3-star piece who has a passive. So every time after the Warlock moves, he can push any other piece, moving it into an unoccupied space next to it. So I really like that, so I'll be taking the Great Warlock. My opponent would then choose one of these 3-star pieces, and the last one would be discarded. So then, during the next draw, player 2 gets the first pick, because 2 is an even number, like 2 is. So they might see Telepathic Takeover here, which has an ability. And abilities are something that you can use your turn on other than moving a piece. So in this case, Mind Invasion is a one-time use ability which will allow them to move one of my pieces as if it were their own. So that's really strong, and they would take that. Then I would take a card as well for my own, and then this last card would be discarded. Then the draft would continue, drafting 1 more 2-star, and then go on to draft 2 1-stars. In this case, I'm going to take Explosive Seal, because I really like its detonation passive, which prevents enemies from landing within its range without killing them, but it can't move on its own, so there's upsides and downsides. Same with Venomous Cobra, which I'll also be taking for this demo. Its passive Fangs will, if it's removed, it will remove the piece that removed it at the start of the next turn, which is another very good ability, although it's compensated by the Venomous Cobra's very limited movement. After all players have their pieces drafted, the game's going to move into setup phase. which will be shown here. So during the setup phase, players are going to be able to see all the pieces that they have and that their opponent has. So here you can see these are my opponent's pieces that I'm looking at now, and these are my pieces. Here's the setup. It's a lot to take in at first, but that's made a little easier by you can hover over pieces to see their names, and then look at the corresponding cards to see what they do. So in this case, I've set my pieces up somewhat defensively, because I know my opponent is player 2, so they're going to get the first move. So in this case, they have the telepathic takeover, which can use one of my pieces as their own. So they see a great opportunity to use that here with the Bloodthirsty Hound and Venomous Cobra. So for their turn, they're going to activate Telepathic Takeover's ability, which is going to control my Bloodthirsty Hound. You can see their movement here. And they're going to use my Bloodthirsty Hound to capture my Venomous Cobra. And because of the Venomous Cobra's passive, which we went over earlier, my Bloodthirsty Hound is now effectively dead as well, because he's now poisoned. So it was really a great move by the opponent. At the end of either player's turn, this stability token is going to move 1 unit forward, and what that represents is the pocket universe is slowly crumbling because of the Mad Wizard's slightly misdone enchantment. So eventually the board will start to deteriorate, and we'll see that later. So for my turn, I'm going to move my Great Warlock here, and then use his passive, which we went over earlier, which allows him to bump a piece. So I'm going to bump this Explosive Seal, which can't move on its own, but kills anything in its range if an enemy ends their turn there. I'm going to bump it forward to try and move it towards this large clump of pieces to kill them all, and then move the stability token 1 forward. My opponent is going to respond with moving their Servant of the Gods forward. He's generally a pretty weak piece, but if he can capture another piece, he becomes incredibly strong. So he's trying to move him forward aggressively to try and take out my Warlock, which ends up being a pretty big mistake, because then I'm able to simply move my Warlock where it doesn't really matter, but I'm able to bump this Explosive Seal forward. And now he's got a big problem, because he's got these 3 pieces here, which are all going to be killed if he doesn't respond by moving at least one of them. So he opts to save his Shielding Theurgist by moving him 1 space back. But these 2 pieces ended their turn in the Explosive Seal's range, which is going to kill them both, as well as removing this. So there you can see some of the unique gameplay that we have to offer. Finally, as the game progresses, more and more pieces will be removed until we get to this final state here, where it's just my Warlock versus his Servant of the Gods. Here, the stability token is right at the end of the board, which means once I move forward, the board is going to destabilize and collapse. So I can use that to my advantage, move my Great Warlock forward, and bump the Servant of the Gods back with the Great Warlock's passive, and then end my turn. And since the stability token is at the end, it's going to move back to the beginning, and these board markers are going to come in and cover up these sections of the board, and any pieces on those spaces are going to be removed from the game. So in this case, I'll win the game. I hope you enjoyed this demo, and thanks for watching.